My name is Meira Blaustein. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Woodstock Film Festival, and you guys are in for a treat. This is a very special panel that you're going to be seeing right here, and it's inspired, or it stems from a film that we're showing here at the festival called The Promised Band. Promised Band is an incredible documentary that is about Israeli and Palestinian women. For those of you, have you seen the film? It's really great. So I'm very glad that the filmmaker, as well as a couple of the participants in the film, as well as some of academics, are all here to talk to you today about the feminism in the Middle East, where things are now, where they're going, how much they can change, will they change, and really just explore it all with you. So I would like to bring first our moderator, Dr. Holly Shaw. Come on in and take a seat, please. And hi, Holly. Dr. Holly. You are sitting right here, correct? And I'm going to pass the microphone now to Dr. Shaw, who will bring the panelists. But if Jen and everybody, if you can just come over here and take your seats, and then Dr. Shaw will introduce everyone, and the panel will proceed. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Really appreciate it.
And thank you all for attending. We're very eager to talk with you today. And I would like for each panelist to introduce herself, starting with Jen Heck. Of course.
I guess we're starting with me because I brought everyone together,
Yes.
Both through the film and through my professional relationships, putting the movie together. Both Dr. Holly and the other Dr. Holly were consultants when the movie first started, and Lena and Vicky are in the film. Martina shot the movie and was a collaborator all throughout, so the movie kind of brought us together. I know some of you maybe haven't seen it, but I'm the director of the film, and my experience working in the Middle East has been exclusively in the context of the film, so. You go first.
My name is Ina Qadri. I'm from Palestine, and I'm in the film. This is briefly.
Vicky?
I'm Vicky Oslando, and I'm from Israel.
Dr. Holly?
I'm Dr. Olga, but my nickname is Holly, and I'm a professor of Persian and Arabic languages and literatures, and I'm here sort of in a professorial-ish way.
Martina?
My name is Martina Radwan. I'm a cinematographer, and as Jen said, I shot the film, and I have been to the Middle East several times in several different places.
And my work with Jen and in life is both as a professor of nursing and public health, as a trauma specialist for many, many years, and that work has brought me to the Middle East about 30 times, and working with communities and primarily women, children, and adolescents who've experienced severe conflict in Cambodia, in the Middle East, in Uganda, former child soldiers. I have a clinical practice, and I also do a lot of work at the UN, where I'm involved in the NGO community and hold several elected positions. And one of the high points of the year at the UN, and there are many for those of you who have little faith in the diplomats, the NGO community is doing very well, is the High Commission on the Status of Women. And that's held every year. It's a mandated conference for 10 days, and we meet at the UN. 10,000 primarily women from all over the world come for a series of discussions. And I always find the Middle East women to be the most interesting because they begin the discussion saying, you think we're fragile, submissive, frail women, but actually we're here to talk about our strengths. And I think that the film speaks to the strength of women all over, and we get to see a glimpse of that in this really wonderful film. So our conversation today among ourselves and with you will focus primarily on the strengths of women and the strengths of these particular females in overcoming obstacles and also being able to view their experience from their own unique perspective. So we're wondering how many of you have seen the film? Okay, about half. So our discussion will not be exclusively about the film, but we'll use it as reference. I would encourage the rest of you to make a plan to see it. And part of that will be our summary in terms of how you can join with us in making this film available to communities across the world, really. So I'd like you to kind of think about what you can do to help market this film and get it seen in your mosques, in your temples, in your synagogues, in your churches and community groups, because it's a wonderful conversation starter. So we're wondering if any of you have come with particular questions or interests in shaping this discussion about females and feminism in the Middle East. Are there any particular ideas that you had in mind or questions that you had hoped would be answered? Okay, sorry, I was supposed to do that. So the film, and I think we should let Jen really describe it, but the film is a beautiful piece that really focuses on 5 people attempting to come together, crossing borders and cultures to get to know each other and accomplish some goals. And the frame for that is having a band, and that gives a context and a structure and an explanation for coming together. And the film describes each person's experience of that. What's been interesting to me to see in several iterations is that among the participants, it's the women who were able to deal with nuance, ambivalence, and obstacles in creating these possibilities. And though the 2 males in the band were very interested, they weren't able to somehow resolve their issues and be successful in meeting together. But these 2 women and the other women in the film were able to meet many obstacles and pursue their goal to come together. And in the context, I think, of their relationship with each other, learn new things about themselves and their cultures, their environments, and their aspirations for the future. So, Jen, do you want to add something?
Am I on? Yeah, okay, sorry. The film is, in short, it's the story of a group of young women that come together and start a band. It's kind of a cover story for their having a friendship and building a relationship. I kind of consider it a love story. And when I started it, I didn't think it was going to be a big feminist film. I mean, I am a feminist, but it was just sort of going along for the ride. And what ended up happening is only the women were able to come together, like Holly said. So, and there was a lot of nuance in how they could come together and how other people couldn't. The different members of the band, including the men, sort of represent a microcosm of the society in a way. And when people can't be present, it kind of speaks to why they can't be present in able to move forward in the bigger political situation, and makes it understandable and relatable because it kind of simplifies it in these sort of broadly painted strokes as we're watching it play out. And I guess that's in a nutshell what it is. And as we came together with the film and got to know these ladies and got to see how things were playing out in real time, it really became a story about how women can just do things that men can't do and can see each other in ways that men can't, particularly in a conflict situation. It was surprising and not surprising to me. We went in with no expectations, but it certainly played out in a very specific way that was enlightening to all of us, I think, and they can speak to their own experiences because we all really took something very different away from it, went into it with different things and came out of it with different things. But
I think also the interesting piece is that the strength and unique qualities of what they could do just emerges rather than really be directed or be predicted or prescribed. Their ability to cross borders, in metaphorically but also physical borders, emerged as a real strength and I think encouragement to many that sometimes the road to peace involves complex negotiations and coming together, not just political views. And so I think that that's been an interesting aspect of this film. And I wonder if you might, yes?
This was between Palestine and Israel. These are the two. The border that you're talking about is that border. So
And-
does it address the issues that other Arab women deal with as far as the repression or not repression?
Well, yeah, I think that for me, one of the strengths is that those issues emerged in an interpersonal context rather than in a politicized context. But it was very clear watching what had to happen. The rehearsals were all in Ramallah because that was the easiest place to cross the border, or the easiest mechanism. So many people, several people were crossing the border to Ramallah, and we get to see the danger and the adventure and the risk of Israelis doing that, as well as the risk for Lena and being a participant in that process. And in that context, we get to see this very commonplace, almost toxic political situation really played out in an interpersonal way. So if you have a specific question about that, maybe Lena and Vicky could answer about your experiences in that process.
Well, I would have a comment as an outsider, because I came in as an outsider, and I think the strength for me of the film is that it's not about the common conflict that we all know, that we all think we know. You know, yes, of course, there is oppression. There's oppression on the Israeli side of women. There's oppression on the Arab side of the women. But this film is about the strengths of the women, how women have strengths and are independent, fiercely independent, and that's what allows them to overcome boundaries, borders, and get together.
And I think that's that just watching that emerge, although it wasn't necessarily planned or scripted to happen that way. And I think that we all observe that in our daily lives all the time, the way our strengths and our sensitivities and our sense of the whole, rather than a piece or segment, emerges as women in our everyday lives. This was certainly more dramatic, but very relatable beyond the politics, because I think it really speaks to our experience and our desire to be able to express that and to live our lives in a way that's whole and that holds a space for everyone, not just for some. And the particular challenges that they had in handling these obstacles were pretty formidable. But I think that they're ones that we can all identify with in one way or another. And were transformative in the rest of their lives, and I think that's a part that we're all eager to hear about.
Yeah, and I don't want to, because a lot of you haven't seen the film, I don't want to totally focus on the film, but I think a jumping off point is that, again, why are women able to, connect in ways that men can't? What are we bound by and what are we not bound by, socially, politically, personally, interpersonally, and that's what I started to, see unfold myself. And there was a certain freedom to what we were able to do and how we were able to move forward. I mean, maybe freedom isn't the right word because we had to pretend we were doing something else to be able to do it. It was really interesting, like what we were able to do, and it was so simple because it was just built on we weren't trying to just save the world, or, there was no giant ego attached to it where people had to hear about, hey, I did this, or hey, I did that to save the world. It was just, I just have to be friends with this person. I sometimes it's harder to walk down the street and smile, and that's a bigger accomplishment than like, people go for this big lofty goal, and we just focused on these small relationships, and it was hard enough to keep them together. And now, and Lena and Vicky can speak to this, like when I left, they couldn't, we didn't have the infrastructure of the band, and their relationships changed. They couldn't go see each other, and now it's, completely kind of impossible, and you guys could maybe talk about that, but I mean, just as a starting point, once I left, how many times have you actually crossed the border to see each other? I know you
we
have, but
we have done it. And I just want to comment on, I think you both said in different ways, everything is political. Me meeting Lina, all of us meeting Lina and going to Nablus, and it's always political. And maybe that's a reference to the Middle East, I don't know, but I think you can't be not political. Everything we did was political. We don't have to march or like wave flags or something, but she's inviting us or we're willing to come or wanting to come is a political act. It's an act that says, yes, I want to meet that person, I want to engage with them, with her, I'm sorry, and I want to do a different thing beyond the normal or the status quo in that terrain. So it is political. There's nothing not political about it. And I think the movie is very political. So you shouldn't and we shouldn't, and I don't want to go far from it. And I think you should look at this friendship as a friendship with a political background, and that's okay. I mean, yes, it's fine. It doesn't take anything from it. Okay, it doesn't make it any less special. And we do meet. Actually, we met here in the States. It was so easy, just like 15 hours of flight. And how have you been?
And for me, crossing the border from Palestine to Jordan, then the flight.
Then the
so
flight, yes.
It's
We
easier
couldn't
for
even,
you.
she's like an hour drive, no, less than an hour drive
It's like 15
by car.
minutes.
From Tel Aviv?
From Tapua.
Tapuach. Well,
Yeah.
it's the West Bank, but no, like an
15
hour from Tel Aviv, where I live, which is nothing. It's less than the city of New York and here, right? It's like a much more long. But it's easier for us to meet in a completely different country, and she can't even take the same plane that I do. She needs to go to a different country and then take a plane to the States. So. Yes, it's a totally political.
And I want to add something about the borders because maybe people here don't really understand the concept of the separation wall. The separation wall was created only to prevent Palestinians to get into the land of 84 of the occupied Palestine, 48, sorry. So the Israelis can pass the borders without any kind of segregations, but we as Palestinians, we cannot enter without permission. So it's easier for the Israelis to get into the West Banks because they have settlements over there, so they go back and forth easily, but we cannot cross without a permission. So I just wanted to make this.
It's like a filter. I mean, you can only get in, not get out. It's like,
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I saw the film 4 days ago.
Thank you.
And maybe 4 days ago is the reason why I don't remember exactly about how you came together. I know Jen was doing other work, and was it a mutual friend of yours and Lena's?
Yeah.
I think
It
it's a
was-
wonderful story with Mustafa, and if you could
Well,
tell
you
that a
know,
little bit.
I like to joke that the movie, of course, started on Mount Everest, which is true. So, yeah, I had a friend on Everest. We met, and he wanted to do a all-Palestinian expedition. That's how I met Lena. When I went originally to Ramallah to meet Lena, it was, you know, in that context. Well, we met in Ramallah, actually, the very first time, yeah.
We did?
But yeah, but she did live in Nablus, yeah. That's how we originally met. I went to Israel to also start working on a movie about the UN and Palestine becoming a state in September of 2011. And you know, all my friends were like, nothing's going to happen with that. And I was like, this time is different. Nothing happened with that. But as I was going across the border, my Israeli friends would say, can we go with you? And I would always say yes. And inevitably, the night before or the morning of, I would get a phone call like, oh, I can't go for whatever reason. Until one person said yes. Our mutual friend, Shlomit went. Met Lena. It wasn't what I was filming. I just happened to film it because, like, I don't know, I just did.
But that
And
was illegal, wasn't it, for
It
an
was
Israeli
illegal.
to cross that border?
It was illegal for her to go into Area A. I mean, I don't want to get into the Oslo Accords because it's extremely complicated, but there are parts of the West Bank that Israelis are not permitted to enter, and Lena lives in one of them. So Shlomit went into a part of the West Bank where she couldn't go, and had an amazing and enlightening experience, and from there, Vicky came with us, and it just sort of coagulated unexpectedly. And the UN thing never happened, and this is the movie that I ended up making. So, and Lena never went to Everest, but we're working on that. So,
But Jen says in the movie, which is so poignant, something about it being easier to climb Mount Everest than to create.
yeah. Well, it is, but it's also, in the analogy I like to use, or it's like taking these tiny steps. And again, we had to accept that our friendship was just a small thing. Maybe no one would ever hear about it, and it's okay if it only changed us. And I think sometimes when people are thinking in these grandiose terms about making peace or making a statement, they want it to be something bigger, and it can get really sidetracked, And we just focused on our relationships, and I kept telling them I was making a movie, but I was like, I hope this is a movie. And, you just have to let it happen, and that's what happened. And, we do have a movie from it, but I think it's really about our relationships. And I know that they changed me, and to go back to being women, I didn't think this was going to be all about women or our experience as women, but it was, and it was only possible, I think, because we were women. And on numerous levels, again, political, social, and just how we interacted with each other, how people handled difficult moments, and I find that fascinating. I don't have an answer for it, but I find it fascinating.
Yes. Oops, sorry. Just leave it.
The first thing I was going to say was, don't you think if a group of young guys wanted to do the same type of thing, kind of get excited about forming a band or crossing the border, that they might, in other words, I don't mean to be a downer about the women and the women and the women, but I could see a bunch of young kids, young guys doing the same type of thing.
I would say try it.
Huh?
I would say try it.
And the two males weren't able to do it.
Well, the two males, one
We're
was,
young.
they had separate stories. I mean, it had nothing to do with them not being able to do it. I mean, the rabbi just
all of the young
chickened
guys I
out.
know in Israel who are in bands call me because they want to meet people over there. So I don't know. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, and I know that.
No, I mean, I think it was an extraordinary film, and I totally agree with the women, the bonding of the women and everything. But I was just thinking that maybe. But the other question I had was, I would love Vicky and Lena to both talk about feminism in their communities, because that's really what we're here to talk about. Yeah. Like what's happening with any feminist movement that you're a part of, or that you know about, or that you can talk about.
Okay, I can start with first of all, the feminist movement in Palestine particularly. The very roots of the feminist movement, it started very early when the women started the wave of the feminism in the whole world. And we have a special case here because women couldn't really dare to talk about feminism in the early stages of the feminism wave, because there is something happening bigger than the feminism issues, like the occupation. So most of the women were trying to access the writing or the media by just writing about the fighting back the occupation, and there was more things going around, but they couldn't really talk about it because you can't ask for equality within an occupation, because under the occupation there is no one is equal. So we are all equal, I mean, because women and women, they are having the same circumstances within the existence of an enemy. in our case. So that period had like faded away. That movement that was going to start faded a little bit, like for almost 20 years. Then it came back in the 80s, where the occupation status was stable, kind of. So they started to make like movements, and there are several movements in Palestine. One of them is the Arab Israeli Palestinian women, who started it with some of the Israeli feminist movements, and they were together until they split it in the 90s, because the Arab women, they didn't want to be controlled by the voice of the Israeli woman. So in the 90s, there was a separation between the movements inside of Israel, I mean for the Palestinian Israeli women. For the West Bank, it's a recent thing. Kind of a recent, it only happened like just 20 years ago. They started to talk about feminism out loud, and you know, because of the return of the Palestinian authorities 20 years ago, all the agendas of the I have to translate a lot in my sorry. All the agendas should be, if they don't sign or allowed any kind of fund without agreeing on the gender, help me.
Parity, the gender equality?
No, you're alone.
So basically, they started to learn about gender 20 years ago, and there are now good gender movements, and like we started to accept the term gender, even though it's not really easy for some people to understand what is the term gender, because it's a new word even in no, not in Arabic.
Yeah.
It's a recent term.
Yes, as a field.
Yes, as a field. Thank you. Help me with these.
Yeah. No. Yes. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm gonna sing in English. So we have now awareness about toward gender issues, and recently, like 5 years ago, a program of gender studies has been created in Birzeit University, and now I'm a student in this master's. I'm getting my master's degree in gender studies.
Do you want to respond to that question?
Yeah, I will
from
just
your
say
perspective,
something
and then maybe
really fast.
we'll go-
I'll say just 2 points. But what Lena said about the women's movement in Israel and Palestine was divided. It's like in every feminist movement, they're always divided, because the struggles are so different, and that's our biggest weakness, not strength, I think. But I wanted to comment and to say regarding Israel that I think we have a very, very important group of women called the Women in Black, which those are women all lost a son or a daughter in war. The what, I'm sorry?
They have a group.
Of the same? It's the same group? Oh, okay. So you know what they have done. I mean, in Israel, we consider them the reason for the withdrawal of southern Lebanon, right? Do you know that?
Yes.
We consider their action to be, well, it's a common understanding that their pressure on the government was the reason that the Israeli army left southern Lebanon after 20 years of occupation.
Yeah.
So I think women in Israel has a unique voice, not all the time heard, but a very unique voice. And I think they are the force that can bring peace, because most of the men, the politicians, are big soldiers, you know, chief of the Israeli army. They all been in many wars and have many decorations, so we are expecting them to be strong and fierce and deal with the Palestinian problem. And it's the women that don't carry on their back those ideas and those expectations from the public, those women who can cry when they go to a scene of a conflict, okay, which are really frowned upon in the Israeli public. Those women who can show emotions are the ones that can bring peace. That's my take on it. It's just my opinion. That's it.
Can you talk a little bit more about showing emotion? That's a really interesting topic.
She's not really good at it.
You want to say something? I'm really not good at that.
So that's
Like
a no.
the
Sorry,
stone.
that's a no.
Can I segue into stylized forming of emotions, which I think is stylized emotions, which I think is a very, very powerful.
What do you mean stylized emotion?
I will tell you in a second. Stylized emotions is when you actually have public lamentation. And this is a voice that is drowned out, usually by religious authorities. And it is one thing that is in a most traditional way, is one of the most powerful voices, a voice that a woman can have. So excuse me for segueing into being a literary geek or anything like that, but I would like to just look at something in literature. I'll take the Iliad, and we'll take Andromache's lament in the Iliad, where she, for a brief moment in her lamentation, says so powerfully what a disaster Hector is as a hero. Because he abandoned his son, he went on the offensive, he was supposed to be a defensive, he abandoned her, she's going to be sold off into sexual slavery. It's all out there in the Iliad. Then you segue into something like the Farkhunda story in Afghanistan, which happened last year. Does anyone know what I'm talking about when I say Farkhunda? Do you remember reading in the New York Times, it was Elisa Rubin who covered it, about this woman who was she challenged somebody in a mosque who was selling amulets, and the mob went crazy on her. And it was something that was so out of control, but what the women did, which was such a powerful thing, this wasn't picked up very much by the press here, but what the women did, and it was a spontaneous protest, what the women did in Afghanistan, which is kind of stuck as a meme, is what they did was they banded together for the first time in Afghanistan. It's like 3,000 women showed up at the funeral, and then the women said that the men had murdered this woman, the men did not protect this woman, the men did this to the woman, they may not touch her coffin, and the women carried the coffin. Now, for those of you who go back to 9/11, we know that there was one of the, I think it was Muhammad Atta refused to have women at his funeral or whatever it is, because there's a certain thing of women not belonging, lamentation not belonging at a funeral. So what the women did is take something that in Afghanistan, which is the one expression that women can use publicly, which is lamentation. They can go and visit each other to lament. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, only if you want me to, because there's nothing to do with this movie. What the women did in Afghanistan when they took this, they took an active role in this woman's funeral. And they carried these pictures of this woman who had been murdered. She had blood all over her face, staring at her murderers accusingly. And that meme has stayed. So now, if a woman is killed in Afghanistan, they now have this meme of the shame and anger that the women feel if a woman has unjustly been killed, as opposed to brushing it under the carpet or something like that. And I take particular example of, I think there was a bunch of Hazara women who were murdered by some Taliban-y ISIS-y people because they were Shia. And among them was a 9-year-old girl, and they all had their throat, they were beheaded, they had their throats slit. And so the meme there was to have the idea of they had these little ghost figures with slit throats, which they would pull out. So that was taking the whole absolute fury of the violence about women and turning it around and throwing it into the public's faces. It's been repressed now. There's been an effort to have a Farhonda memorial. It's not built yet, but it's there, and it's there as an unmade thing, but it's almost an art form by having it. So I just sort of put that out, but I do think that that's why I was so interested to say about emotion, is when you use emotion in true anger, even taking our First Lady's emotion, as she spoke just the other day about sexual harassment, it's very, very powerful when one uses the voice of emotion. And that's one thing that women can do very well. So I'm sorry. Oops, I shouldn't say that I'm sorry. Okay, very unfeminist. I'm not sorry.
I think there was another question. Yes, all the way in the back.
I just want to go back to the film for a moment. I'm very aware from the power of the film that the relationships between the women were very, very strong, and I was so impressed at their strength in creating these relationships. What I'm curious about is possible comments, curiosity, reactions from family members or acquaintances in society who knew something was going on but were not part of it.
And we were also interested in hearing comments about, because the film hasn't been screened outside of the US, and we wondered how your communities would respond.
They would love it.
Hate it. They
We
would
would
hate
hope
it.
so. Could you address that, each of you, and maybe Martina, I'm not sure, if you have any insights about that, but why don't you guys start?
I can't answer that.
No.
Thank you.
No, I mean,
Well, I would divide it like for two comments. There were two reactions. There are the ones that like, where are you going? Why? And the other ones is those people that you're not telling them that you're doing it because they will not react well for such a thing. I would say that back in 2012, I think it was 2012, 2013, that most of the film was shot. We went back and forth, and it was reasonably okay. The relationship between Israel and Palestine was better than it is today. When Lina got married a year ago, she invited us to the wedding, and we talked about it, and we said, yes, we'll go. But then certain people around us told us that it's crazy, you're not allowed to do that, like they forbid us to do that. And I think they were right in some sense, but back then it was okay. Everybody that wants to make like a contact with a different person, that's reasonably okay. But when the relationship is between the countries or states, I don't know if I can say that, if it's right, but when the relationship is more intense, the reactions are obviously harsher. So.
but
Why did you say you agreed that it was better not to go through?
Because back then, a year ago, and now Lina says it's better now. I will take her word for it. But a year ago, it was really tense between Israel and Palestine. There were a lot of violent incidents on both sides, and all over Israel, all over the West Bank and Gaza. So we had a mini war also. So it's not. It wasn't wise. The borders are a lot more tight, and if we get caught in Ramallah, it could be very unpleasant for us, by citizens or by the authority. I mean, it's not wise.
When we got caught at the time, and Vicky wasn't there, but any Israelis in the car would just say, I don't have my ID on me, I'm just an American, and we left our IDs, and it was kind of enough, even though people knew that they knew what we were doing and they let it go, and I don't think that would necessarily happen now.
I mean, I have to say, for those who have seen the film, it looks easier than it was. And for those who have not seen the film, I just want to point out that Israelis and Palestinians do not know each other. This is the first time that an Israeli and a Palestinian got together. I mean, in their life.
And they don't even know the rules. Like, nobody knew, can we cross? Can we not cross?
No,
Where
we
can
know
we?
the road. No,
Well,
it's not true.
you did, but a lot of people didn't. I mean, I had to ask, everyone would give me a different answer. It took me forever to figure out where you could actually go, and
Because you have no
Getting different answers.
limitations because you're an American.
yeah, but even with you guys, I got a lot of different answers, because sometimes people would tell you what they wanted you to do
Yeah.
and pretend that it was the rule, and it wasn't the rule. So, you know, it took a really long time to figure that out.
Yeah.
And perhaps how the rule is enforced may vary also. I've been involved in many activities involving back to youth, Palestinian and Israeli youth, and I would agree that they have a curiosity and a sense of adventure and a sense of wanting to know the other. But whether they have the tenacity and the skill and the innate kind of ability to use their resources in order to make it happen, I think that's the strong variable. I think given the opportunity, even despite all of the cultural prohibitions and the prejudices that most people grow up with, that individuals, upon interacting, are able to transcend them. But being able to do it in the context of rules and prohibitions and all of that involves another level of tenacity and commitment. So, Lena, what would it be like when the film is, not if, but when it's screened in your area, do you think?
It's not going to be easy because some people consider it like betrayal. Like I brought Israelis to my house and take them around in Ramallah and Nablus, and
Some candy.
yes,
Gave us some candy.
yes, of course, and you know, Arabic sweets, knafe, and nice stuff. So I took them like in the old city of Nablus, and it's a really not easy place to be in with Israelis. But but I
They were
told-
Americans.
Yes, I told everyone, because I've been asked, who are they? Why did you get them here? Tourists? Get them in, let them buy some of my stuff.
Well, I remember Shlomit, one of the people in the film.
Okay, Shlomit, her name was Susie.
Yes, we did. That's what I was just going to say.
No
We-
Shlomit
we
in
were
Nablus City.
we were
Please.
at some place, I don't even know where it was, at a rally.
Susie! And she was listening. She wasn't
she
listening.
didn't
She
know.
was-
In my head, I was like, somebody's eventually going to say, "What's your name?" And it happened, and she was not prepared, and she was like, and I was like, Susie Ravid, New Jersey. She's from New Jersey, and that was it, you know. And
she was just walking, and I was like, Susie, Susie.
So
Please,
you'll actually
Susie.
see Susie Ravid in the credits. Yeah. Yeah.
Question?
I just have a quick hypothetical question, very hypothetical. So let me ask the panel, do you think if all the diplomats that work on the Israeli-Palestine issue for peace were women, all of them, no matter who it is, would we no longer be talking about this? Would we have a Palestine state?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so. Well, like Lena says, we'd have jealous countries if women ruled the world.
Yeah.
But not war.
And actually, we've been talking this morning, me and Vicky, that cooking also helps. So,
Or feeding me.
yes,
not
because
me
I was
cooking.
feeding them all the time,
Right.
and I felt really
And then
nice
they forgot
feeding
they were
them,
mad.
and they enjoyed my cooking.
Because maybe they're always hungry. So let's go to war.
But all jokes aside, I would say if I had to give a yes or no answer, and you know everyone can agree or disagree, but yes, because just even seeing them deal with conflict in the film, it was handled differently. It was addressed directly. There was no, you know, like bluster, or it was just, here's this thing, I'm going to put it out there. Maybe it's uncomfortable. Maybe we'll even be angry about it, or maybe we'll laugh about it. I mean, there was a lot of laughing that like people on the outside wouldn't have understood. And I will say also, to go back to the earlier question, I won't get specific, but I will say, and you guys can get specific if you want, but there were things that I took out of the movie, you know, for sort of like social or repercussion reasons. And I don't want to say what they are, but if you guys want to talk about it, you can, I don't, you know, or not.
Because of reprisal or repercussions. I think my comment about answering that question, and back to the Lamentations, is that I think, in my experience as a bereaved mother, not of a soldier, although I do have a son in the military, but of an infant daughter, I think that the way women hold the sorrow of losing a child, a spouse, a relative is different than the way perhaps a father or a man does. And I think when it comes to negotiations and problem solving, those kinds of feelings are paramount and as important, certainly, as the other kinds of negotiations, and perhaps a driving factor. So I think we would see things very differently. I don't think it has to be, and I think one of the things that I'm impressed with about this, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and I think notions of feminism get very much misinterpreted in this country, although our theme is the Middle East, in that when I hear young women say, oh, I'm not a feminist, because I don't think women are better than men. Well, that's not the underlying foundation of feminism, and it doesn't mean that everyone in power has to be a woman. It just means that I think, that there has to be an equal and respected voice. And so a collaboration, not necessarily all, but a real collaboration where that voice is not only present, but valued, respected, and counted, I think we'd see differences throughout the world, undoubtedly.
I just want to say, yes,
No, I
ma'am.
was just going to say, you know, if you think about the Syrian refugee crisis, what country brought in the most was Germany, and who ends up Germany
Yes.
is
Merkel,
a
yeah,
woman. So,
that's true.
you know, that sensitivity versus, not that the other countries didn't help, but it was very obvious.
Yes.
I think
And can I also add that Angela Merkel was on TV talking to a Palestinian girl who was crying, saying, "Are you sending me back? I've been raised here all my life." And in a sense, I didn't really follow Angela Merkel's mind, but that seemed to be kind of a real change with her, because if you think about how she treated the Greeks, and then suddenly she's flipped around with the Assyrians, it was a pretty amazing change that she did.
Well, unfortunately, she denounced her own action lately. So it's because she denounced her own action. She regrets that she has let in that amount of people. But I do think what particular, you know, if we use this as a microcosmos, what Lena and Vicky have shown is that women listen. Women are curious, allow themselves to be curious, and they listen. They don't have to talk all the time. And I think that's a huge difference. I mean, you know, we all know terrible women. Like we in our country have a lot of examples of those, but who are not listening and who are as, you know, I'm lacking the word right now, but I think the difference is, would there be a Palestinian state if there would be only women? I don't know. Like, the chances are much better.
I just want to add, go off the topic of Israel and Palestine for a second. Martina did a film called Saving Face, which was about acid attacks on women, and I don't know if you want to talk about that, but that's also like an extremely fascinating and complex, part of this conversation potentially. So I have to put you on the spot.
Well, I mean, it's about rage. It's about rage and I don't know. I mean, does anybody else question? I'm not sure how how this relates, because it's a small number, but again, it's about rage, and these women have. Pakistan is different. You can't compare Pakistan to Palestine. Sorry. And yeah, I mean, also, like, the Middle East. Can I just point out that it's only the Middle East when you look from the European angle at the Middle East. It's our name for this part of the world. It's not in the middle of the East. It's only in the middle of the East when you look from Europe. So.
Yeah, true.
Yes,
We're the
good
center.
No, I
actually.
think that's important to understand, because you know, it's a colonial.
Yes,
It's a
it's a colonial term,
But I think-
actually. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
we're in
true.
the middle, actually.
I think
and in
also the
center,
middle,
sorry.
that we discussed before, the Middle East is more than Israel
Right.
and Palestine, but really takes
It's-
into countries from all over. I'm part of a wonderful group called Nurses in the Middle East, who are nurses who transcend physical and political and other borders from throughout the Middle East in order to, thank you for the nurses, in order to be committed to taking care of patients and working towards social justice, not in any particular one venue, but on behalf of vulnerable people. So the Middle East, I think, is broader than usually the two specific areas we talk about. And there are many noble, courageous, and tenacious movements going on now of everyday people, mainly women, who are working in their daily lives in order to help others achieve justice and some sort of freedom. There's a question back there?
Yeah, there was a subtext in the movie, Lena, your husband at the time, you've shown in a couple of scenes, and he never spoke. But, you know, you could read a lot from his face. I just wondered, without prying into anything personal, if you could tell us a little bit about what his reaction was throughout this whole process.
And maybe the sensibilities that Jen was concerned about in terms of that issue.
First of all, my ex-husband, one of the audience in the first screening, when we just finished the movie, in the Q&A, she told me, "Oh, he looks so bad, he looks suspicious, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, stop. He's a great father, and he's a man that I respect until I die. He's the father of my 3 children, and he's just a quiet, decent, careless man. So that's it about him. He really doesn't care about camera or mic or people. He just asks me every time he see people in my house, "Do you need anything? Do you need me to bring you anything? Do you bring juice? Do you want me to bring you anything?" That's it. That was his part actually in that specific period of time. So talking about him, all I have to say is he's a great man, and he is a great father, and I totally respect him. And getting a divorce has nothing to do with the movie, because most of the people, they connect both things together. No, I got divorced, and it has nothing to do with the movie, and that's it.
Yeah, it did seem like maybe he was worried about repercussions or something, especially the scene where he's kind of watching.
No, he just watched. He doesn't say anything. He's really quiet. Vicky met him, and Jen met him.
He was very supportive, yeah.
He also had a bunch of people with cameras in his house, like this little.
Yeah.
Yes, you had a question, and
Hi, so I have an interesting background. Oh, I don't need the mic.
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah.
I have an interesting background. I was born in Israel, and I came here when I was 6 months old. And my father was 15 years old when he fought for the state of Israel, and he was from Yemen originally. And so he had a bullet in his stomach at 15 years old, and I remember when we came to this country.
What war? I'm sorry.
The war for Israel, the state of Israel.
48, you mean?
48, yeah. And I remember he was a tough, like a motherfucker kind of guy, you know? And it made total sense from where he came from. I mean, they took anybody at that point, so 15 years old with a gun in his hand, you know? And when he saw any emotion, he would say, "Shame, shame," you know? And so, you know, you could see how people living in, you know, a country where you're constantly, you know, on attack, you cannot allow. He had to completely cut off from any feelings. Yes. You know, and even today, they're still living in a country where you can't be emotional. You know, if you're going to survive, they're really dealing on the level of survival right now. Men can't show the emotion. My family? Well, my father passed away, but in Brooklyn. We grew up here. Yeah. And it was very traditional roles. And, you know, I went on to get educated after he died. I dated a Muslim. My mother was from the Holocaust. I have a lot of German friends, you know, but I don't live in Israel.
Right.
you know? So it's just so interesting to me how I've evolved over the years. And my mother, Holocaust, my father, Yemen, Israel, you know, and I am completely beyond that. But I've grown up here. When I visit my family there, I still see a lot of the traditional roles, even though women are packing guns. There's still this split that I see in ways that I feel like women's voices are coming more forward, but still the guys are really tough, you know, and hard, and still on the level of survival, you know. So I don't know if that's helpful.
But that's also suppression of the emotions, you know, because you have this also. You have the. I mean, when I was in Palestine, I was with a photographer, and he would show me these films of Hamas widows who would put makeup on when their husband was killed because they had to rejoice that their husband had died a martyr. And so they rejoice in but the whole sort of school of doing that is to forbid emotion. And this goes back to, again, is that the voice of emotion is an extremely powerful one. And it has been repressed in very warlike societies where you want to have the controlling of the society. That's the key part. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to add something
Yes.
about, because they think that if you were killed by the enemy, you are going to heaven, so it's worth the sacrifice. So that's why you cannot say that you are sad or cry, because no, he's going to God's heaven. So don't show any kind of emotions because he's in a better place. And I think this is kind of like the controlling of the people's mind, like in the name of religion, because this is bullshit. You cannot just not cry about losing somebody. This is inhuman.
Yes.
This is against humanity, actually. No, if you lose someone, you should cry. If you didn't grieve and cry and have enough time, you will never ever heal, and you will keep the resentment in your heart, and it will affect others. And you will never have peace with yourself, so you will never have peace to give to others.
Yes.
Thank you.
Apropos to what you just said, Lena, what do you all think as we get back to feminism when we're trying to struggle in a world with all of these countries where the religious doctrine separates women from men to such a point that as long as those religions exist and put men above women, even going back to the rabbi in the movie, I had to think of that, and even in terms of religious Judaism, in terms of women have to be separate, they cannot sing, they cannot sit together. So we're constantly separating ourselves with these religions, and Arab customs also, and women's faces being covered or not covered. So as long as we have these religions with these rules and women abide by them and live in them, how do we get through that to feminism? How does feminism rise above these religious traditions?
Yes, I've read a lot in my studies about the Islamic feminism movement. And some of a great writer, he's Algerian, and another is Egyptian also. They said that we should separate religion from politics in order, especially in Islam, in order to kind of move on with not liberty, but I don't know how to say it, but I believe that religion is controlling not only Muslim women or Jew women. The patriarchic mentality, it's like a controller not only for women, even for men. And if we search for it's like a pyramid, and if we search for and if we search for, I'm sorry, I just need to
You're doing
translate.
very well.
These are really huge phrases in Arabic, so I'm trying to sum it up. So basically, everyone is controlled by religion on the top of the pyramid. And what controls the religion is the financial things. I believe. I'm sorry. This is what in my, I think it's financial things and capitalism, then religion, then everything else.
I think that religious scholars would say that the idea of separating men from women, and certainly the rabbi not being comfortable being allowed to hear women sing, really has to do not with better or worse than, but sexuality, and we don't talk much about that, and the idea that a man should not be exposed to a woman's sensual or sexual self, not because that in itself is evil, but because he will not be able to control himself and it will be too much of a temptation. We see that here too. That doesn't just exist there, but as the foundation of much separation has to do with sensuality and sexuality, and whose is it, and whose responsibility is it to exert self-control or denial or any of that. But I think that's another conversation perhaps, but an underlying part of all of this.
And I want to add something. Also hiding the women behind the veils and all these things. It's when she feels like from the outside she's hidden, she cannot speak out loud, I think, because she will be shy. I want to give an example. Some of the municipality elections recently happened in the Arabic world in some countries. When the women were elected, they didn't put their pictures in the elections. So they used like an icon, like a rose or a flower. And her name wasn't written. They wrote the wife of significant someone. And that was a real disaster because a lot of people, they were like criticizing this. And I wrote something on Facebook and I said, if you cannot control or you cannot just put your name on the freaking list, then what you are going to do for us? Why we should vote for you at the first place if you don't dare to show your face? How come you want us to elect you? Why you are here at the first place? So it's because she's hidden. She's wearing veil and even her name is hidden. Even her picture is hidden. So it's really it's against like normal thinking. Yes. No.
You lost.
I think what you're talking about is empowerment of women. And the patriarchal society is like a universal structure in our world. I mean, we're still dealing with it in America. So empowerment of women is really what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. And also it has to be changed fundamentally. It's not really easy to just make like small courses, or it has to be like not free. How do you say it? It's not frequent. How do you say it?
Small steps.
Yes, small steps, but baby steps, and it should be. You should be selective, choosing who you want to be in these circles, not like random women who pretend to be free and they are not. Because I'm like struggling with these kinds of women, because even in my class where I'm studying my master's right now, sometimes when we have those discussions, I was like, some of the women, they started to say things like, how come you are studying gender and you are saying this? How come you are pretending to be like an open-minded female who's trying to make a change in her own house? Then on the community, you cannot say this if you are willing to be the change. So it's really happening, and it's really like shocking for me, actually. So you have to be selective.
But it's good that there's someone that's challenged you inside your classroom.
Yes.
It's good that you're not all thinking the same. I mean, it's good for your class, I think. In all gender studies, I think there are always those man or woman that will say the complete opposite.
Yes.
And the chauvinist, misogynist thing. But that's okay, because we're here to change them.
Yeah.
Let's hear your...
So my question is for Vicky. I saw the film, and it seemed that in the film, just correct me if I'm wrong, but you served in the Israeli military, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so I just wanted to, if you could just give sort of your, that is not an uncommon thing in Israel, correct, for women to serve in the military, so, or here. And could you just give a little bit about your perspective? That seemed, your experience in the military seemed to shape your initial impression about the idea of going into Palestine, and if you could just give I'm sorry, your experience in the military seemed to give you an initial reluctance to meet with Lena.
Sure.
And if you could just talk a little bit about that and overcoming that.
For all honesty, I still am a part of the Israeli army because they never leave you. So I'm still in what we call reserve. I say it in the movies. In the beginning, it's really funny because you don't take it seriously. We're all obligated to join at 18, and today, less when I was enlisted. Today, there are very brave 18-year-olds that refuse to serve and go to jail for long periods of time, and that's a really interesting movement in Israel. That young, feisty boys and girls refusing to serve from the beginning. But back then I wanted to be a part, and I did all that journey to become an officer, and I'm an officer in reserves. But in the middle of my service, towards the end, my service became more. I became more engaged with the Palestinian community by going to Gaza a couple of times during military operations, not as a fighting force, but as a logistic force. It's different, but the experience, the harsh feeling is exactly the same. You don't have to fight like with guns to know that you're a part of something terrible. I mean, to know that what's happening doesn't make any sense. And Gaza and the West Bank are so close to my home, so close to everybody's home, because Israel is, as a territory, is very, very tiny. So I know I'm like an hour drive from a complete disaster. It's not like when your army goes to fight in Afghanistan and Iraq. So they have to travel that huge distance, and then they come back and everything is normal. But this is so close. This 20 minutes drive, and it's crazy. It's like, it doesn't even make any sense to live in those conditions and make it, and it will be okay. So when I went, participate in what later became a movie, but I never believed it would be a movie. So that's why I'm so honest on it, because I didn't believe Jen. So Me too. She's like, Jen, what's the movie about? I don't know. Can you
Are we on focus? I work in my day job. I've had to do some reality TV shows, so I got really good at not answering the question.
Yeah. So I'll just sum up. So I had a really tough experience. Like, I always were a Democrat from the left side of the political, but I've never been, left and so emotionally involved. So the army made me emotionally involved in a certain way, and when I was suggested by Jen to come, I was like, I can't deal with this, emotionally. It's too hard for me. But then I did it because, that's what we do. We suppress things and don't think about them and just do it. And it was again very, very emotional. So because it's really, really hard. You see Lena, she's this awesome person, and obviously the West Bank is filled with awesome people. Most of them are awesome people, right? And most of Israelis are awesome people. But yeah, we're awesome. That's why I just want to make a little detour. I don't think it's about men against women, who can make peace. It's you need to clear out the table from the soldiers, because the soldiers can make peace. They know how to do war. So my my elected politicians will never make peace because they're soldiers, right? You need people who are citizens and think in that matter. You need people that are not in the army. So the army had this impact on me, and it stayed with me. And as a reserve officer, I'm very selective in my service. Not that I'm allowed to, but I still do it. I didn't answer the question. That was like Trump, right? Never answering. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, right?
God
Sorry.
forbid.
Sorry.
We have time for just a few more questions. Yes.
Just listening to this conversation, it makes me realize what a revolutionary act human connection is, and how, you know, you have this separation between the people and the citizens, and that can really fuel confusion and the support of war. So I was just wondering, like, what other initiatives did you guys know about where people are trying to get Israelis and Palestinians together on an emotional and intimate level, and have you been seeing like impact and positive impact of that, like was described in the film?
Do you want to comment? There are many initiatives between Israel and Palestine. Most of them deal with teens, because like you should start it early, not late.
Like seeds of peace.
Yeah,
and
hands of peace.
Yeah. There are many things, I think not enough, and I think the people that initially go there are not the ones that need the change, or are not the ones that are, I mean, okay, let's take the basic thing. I live in Israel. I studied English from like my third year at school. Lina lives in Nablus. She studied English from what age?
School.
School?
Early school.
I don't know how to speak Arabic, okay? That's the beginning, and that doesn't, I don't speak Arabic. That's ridiculous. I'm not obligated to learn it, but I am obligated to speak Arabic. So we talk between us in English, which is stupid. It's stupid because now we're in Woodstock and we can't like gossip about this. Sorry. So there are initiatives, but it doesn't start from the right age, I think, and it's not obligatory for everyone.
And also, I want to say about the initiatives, there is a program that Seeds of Peace. I know most of you maybe heard about it. My daughter, she got engaged in that program when she was 13, and now she's 21. And she came to the United States in this joint program with the Israelis kids, and she was selected for 4 times. To get children into that, they have to have an open-minded parents to put them in these kind of delegations. Because when I agreed and like searched and read about these kind of organizations, I was a little bit terrified because I really didn't want her to be brainwashed by the Israelis and the Americans. Because I didn't want her like to confirm peace, love. No, I wanted her to understand the language of to be able to have a proper conversations with the other considered as an enemy. And I believe that those kids should be involved more in these programs because they are the future of these countries. We are done, I think. I mean, for me. I cannot do anything regarding politics, for example. I can't be in charge, like to be a prime minister of the Palestinian. I know I can't.
I'm not counting you out, but
well, I can do something in the women's affair maybe, but not like taking a major decisions. So I believe that those kids, they need like an open-minded parents to allow them, because most of the family, they said, what, you are sending her with the Israelis? Are you crazy? She will be brainwashed by the Americans and the Israelis, and when she come back home you will never get to control her, maybe she will lose her virginity. Yes, I've heard this a lot from the people around me. Maybe she will be like a bad girl. Are you not afraid on her? She might have a boyfriend. And I said, "Oh, I would love to see her with a boyfriend." And she did. But not when she was 14, when she was 18, and I was really happy about it. And her boyfriend is Egyptian, by the way, and she's also plays music in the PYO, the Palestinian Youth Orchestra, and she's a brilliant musician, and she met her boyfriend there, and I'm fine. I don't really have issues regarding these things, because you have to raise strong women to have strong nation afterwards. You cannot have strong nation with weak, stupid women. You cannot. So I wanted my daughters, both of them, to be strong enough to deal with any kind of a condition in her life. My other daughter, she went to Istanbul, and that was her choice. She she studied 1 year only in Birzeit University, and she said, listen, I'm not going to do this anymore, and I want to go and study cooking, because that's what I love. And I told her, you are right. You have to do whatever you want to do. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the Birzeit dorm that we rented for you. That's fine. You can just leave everything behind and do whatever you want to do. And she did. She studied French and Turkish cuisine in Istanbul, and she's now happy because she did what she wants. And I'm not afraid of my daughter living alone in Istanbul, because I really don't care if she loses her virginity. That, of course, that does not really apply in even in my, I can't be hypocrite and say I don't care, but I raised my daughters to be strong and wise enough not to do anything in the stupid way. So that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Question over here.
And her daughter is amazing too. So.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No, that's too much.
Question?
I wanted to thank all of you for coming and sharing your perspectives with us. It is very enlightening. And just to follow up with the youth and our future, I was wondering if there is a women's movement in Israel or Palestine, or a combination of both, where the children go to school together. I know there once was a school where Palestinian and Israeli children went to.
In Jerusalem. Yeah, but that's even a tricky question, because there are a lot of bilingual schools where the children will be identifying themselves as Palestinians. So the question is, what do you call a coexisting school? Because I think in Tel Aviv there are many like those, because Jaffa, which is a huge Arab community, all the schools in that area are joint, and those Arabs they consider themselves Palestinians. So.
And maybe a question about the Palestinians inside the West Bank, not the one within the Israeli.
In the West Bank, school for settlers and Arabs together.
Of course, no.
Maybe
no.
No way. What? Because the settlers are, they live there because they believe they have the right to get inside those territories and make them their own. They are not a dialogue kind of people, in my view. Maybe that's not nice to say as a statement to all, but in my view.
Question over here.
Yes, please, tell us how we can help spread the word of this film. How much coverage are you getting? Are you going to be on TV here? Are you going to be in the movie theaters here? Or is it going to disappear?
Jen.
And is it going to be shown in Israel and Palestine?
Well, we're working on we're working on that. I think the thing with the film, what we were trying to do is make this accessible. I think people come into a film on this topic with a lot of preconceptions, and it can be prohibitive. They don't want to see something political, or they don't want to be told what to think, or they think they already know what to think, all kinds of things, which I think limits our audience in some ways. And part of what I was trying to do was almost to subvert the sort of TV format to make this accessible and to make this personal, and as a way to almost trick people into disarming and just hearing the story about these people and about these politics. Because when I was talking about making this film, and when I was making this film, and you tell people what you're doing, it was just like, oh, yeah, I don't want to think about that. And that's an obstacle for us. So I think word of mouth is really important. You know, we're talking to distributors now and stuff. I mean, we certainly want to get the movie out there, because the best part of this experience for me, in some ways, has been the discussions that have come from it. We've done a lot of festivals. We talk to a lot of people. Unfortunately, these guys can't be here for all those conversations, or they would be even more robust, because obviously they bring so much to the conversation. But it is, the movie does disarm people in some ways, and not make them too defensive. And we have had people from both sides of the conflict see the movie and like the movie and be open to talking about it. I mean, of course, some people don't like it, you know, don't react to the politics well, but it's important to get it out there. And yeah, I don't really know how to do that, actually, though, I guess.
Okay, I can chime in.
Yeah, this Martina's the expert.
I can chime in. I have my prepared speech that always follows after gender aside. If you have access to any press, if you can get us on Woodstock TV, we will be there. So that's the way. It's a word of mouth, and yes, people who like the film, if you can help us spread the word, if you can help us get exposure beyond the festival. The festival will do great for us, I'm sure, but still, any exposure is good.
I think also you should know that this film was nominated in 2 categories at this festival, which I think is a significant accomplishment. And I think that we can all do something. And I think, again, what really moved me about this was the actions of individuals to strive for connection and to make that connection a goal in and of itself, not only the content of forming a band. And I think we need to reflect, especially at this time, on what each of us can do to promote discussion and not polarization, because it's so simple for us to be polarized in our opinions and not really support interaction and collaboration, which is what it's going to take, not just in the Middle East or in New York, but really across the world, learning how to really appreciate diversity, not just racially, ethnically, gender-wise, but opinion-wise, and to be able to really listen to each other and not just prepare a monologue in response to an opposing or alternative view. And I think in terms of this festival and this industry and so many others, to really think about newcomers and insiders and outsiders and what we can do in our usual lives to be more open to kind of outsiders and have new views of what's different and how we want to envision the life that we want and the place that we want for our children to live in. And most of the programs that are successful in all parts of the world involve that kind of collaboration. And feminism doesn't apply just to females or to women, but I think really speaks to tolerance and acceptance and a space for not just men and women anymore, but other genders, other, kind of new iterations of gender that we need to be open to. And there are campaigns, He for She, which is involving boys and men in issues that relate to women and violence, and so many campaigns that really bring people of diverse experience and diverse viewpoints together. And it seems to me that Woodstock is a wonderful place for that to kind of fulminate. And if each of us leaves with a plan to open our minds to a different kind of discussion and engage in that, and to see how this film can be promoted, and to see how we can revise some of our ideas of what's traditional and right into a better spirit for all of us, not just some of us, then that will go a long way. And hopefully we'll be back sometime and see Jen win greater awards Martina, to be successful, and for each of us to be able to express our own uniqueness in a way that's heard and listened to, and doesn't force us to be anything other than what we are.
I want to say one quick thing too. I think what I learned and what we learned is that part of the path to peace is just people caring about each other, and maybe you could argue that one gender or women are more equipped to do that simply because of how we've been socialized, really, and in some ways we're allowed to talk to each other in a different way, and we know how to talk to each other in a different way. But it really is about learning to care about each other, and I think that not about credit. Like I said before, people want to change the world and they get into like these more grandiose plans to do that, and it's like just one relationship at a time that nobody even has to know about actually does change things. It's modest and it's small, but it makes an impact. Whether we're talking about changing the world and bringing peace to a conflict like this, or just something within our own families, I think it really matters, and we should take it seriously and not look at it as a waste of time because we're only talking to one person, because that's the most powerful connection you can make, and we have to allow ourselves to be open to caring about other people, no matter how alien it might feel, and just see what happens from there. So.
I think it's not socialization and it's not alien, it's oxytocin. It's in our biology to be connected and to strive towards connection. We're hardwired. We know now, modern science kind of demonstrates this over and over again in ways that we can see in PET scans and MRIs, that we're hardwired for empathy and connection, and women do have an advantage in our biology to move towards that connection. And so we are innately equipped, and we can share that, and we can promote that, and we can certainly encourage that among all genders. But we do have a unique benefit in that respect. We have time for just one more. I saw one more hand raised, and I didn't want to end leaving anyone out.
Jen, just want to know if you have plans for your next movie.
Good
question.
question.
If it will be feminist-based.
Well, I just did this movie for Prince, so that's why I'm wearing my Prince thing, about his secret philanthropic work. That was just a short piece that played at his memorial. Holly and I have actually been collaborating on something completely different. Holly was she was the first person when the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up, she was the person who went to Concord, New Hampshire and talked to the children at the high school.
And the teachers.
Yeah, so she had a sort of insider's point of view. And before I even knew her, I had done a film. It was a coming-of-age story that was tied into the Challenger exploding and the main character seeing that happen on TV, which Martina shot. And so I've always been building this story around that coming-of-age story combined with Holly's real-life experience. We're now turning into a feature that's a scripted feature about this town, Concord, which actually, before all of this started with the Challenger and Krista McAuliffe, there was a school shooting in the town that changed the whole town, and the shuttle going up became this sort of beacon of hope that was going to bring them back together. And obviously that didn't work out, but so that's the story that we're trying to tell right now, and it's hard. We're working on totally different subject matter in a way, but there's always some themes that are parallel, I think. And well, I have my website, which is just jenheck.com, and I try to put stuff up there, and I'm going to be doing a better job of that really soon, I
And
promise.
we really want to encourage people, and I've been asked particularly to encourage people to be in touch with her and follow her as she devises new ways to kind of reach out and connect. But we hope that all of you will connect with her. The Challenger story is something that really, in 1984, which was a long time ago, before we had internet and everything else, really touched people all over the world. And being in Concord, New Hampshire then was incredibly moving because we didn't have Facebook and internet, and people just sent things from all over. And I think the universal issue of a teacher and a mom dying in some heroic adventure, and the way that that affected and touched people all over the world was really very moving. And the idea of grief of the loss of a young life that preceded that, and the idea of this hopeful venture, kind of healing the community, is not a story that's been told anywhere, but was very much a part of that. And I think it brings us back to humanity and to the tenuous nature of life and the value that we need to place on all lives, on our lives, and the connections that we make through life. And I think Jen is especially talented in being able to tell those stories. And so is Martina, in a very moving, real way that then changes not just the participants, but is able to change something within each of us, with the good fortune to be able to view them.
I just want to say too, Lena is a painter and working out of Ramallah and working with some of these themes, and you should definitely check out her work and what she's doing to get it out there, because I think that's a whole nother super interesting story that we probably don't have time to talk too much about, but her work is incredible, and it's out there.
So thank you all for coming. Please do follow Jen, Jen Heck at jenheck.com, and we hope to see you again sometime.
The